Chad, literally 30 seconds ago, you asked our next guest in studio, Riley Gaines, who's here, if she's on Twitter. The reason for so many underscores is because
she got deleted.
Yeah, canceled.
So I'm
back.
Putting a tweet together right now.
Attempted cancellation.
This is a thing. What do you think about this preview, Hutton?
Go ahead.
I said we are joined now by @Riley_Gaines_ to talk about being protested because she dared to say men and women are different. That's a hell of a. I mean, can I leave now?
Go ahead.
That's good. All right.
Just include the link.
I can just do that. That's
include
a great intro.
And we'll have Riley retweet. Riley, welcome.
Thank you so much, and it's crazy, but that's 100% accurate.
That is one of the best tweets I've ever seen.
How did you find out that your account was, paused and then originally deleted, so you had to recreate this?
It was weird because a notification came up on my phone. I was trying to build this platform so I could continue spreading stories that are very similar to my own, and it said someone actually reported me for lying about my birthday in my profile. I said my birthday was in 1999. I'm a 2000s baby. So someone reported that I had lied, therefore my account got banned.
I was thinking you were born in a leap year or something.
Yeah.
That's like a real, that's like, trying to get Capone on tax evasion, like a real backdoor way to get you out because you're saying something they don't like. Riley, take us back to the whole Leah Thomas ordeal, right? And your story is interesting because we can all sit and talk about the common sense approach to this and say there's a reason that men's and women's sports have been separated for so long. You lived with it. You competed. You've seen this firsthand, and your story in and of itself is crazy, especially leading up to the trophy presentation in this whole deal. Can you take us through it?
Absolutely. So I grew up here in Nashville, actually, and I started swimming at the age of 4. I'm 22 now, so I dedicated 18 years of my life to swimming. And so my senior year, I had made it my goal to win a national championship, which was something I knew I was capable of doing. Middle of our season, about November of 2021, all of a sudden this person, Lia Thomas, comes out of nowhere, posting the fastest times in the nation by multiple seconds, which in swimming, seconds is a lot to be leading the nation by, in multiple events. And so there were so many red flags, but never once did it occur to me that this could be a male until, of course, an article was posted saying that Lia Thomas was formerly Will Thomas and swam 3 years on the men's team at University of Pennsylvania. And so when I found this out, I was truthfully relieved because I was able to look up who Will Thomas was and saw that this was a mediocre man, ranking 462nd at best nationally in the men's division. And so I thought the NCAA would see it exactly how I saw it. Nothing opinionated, just the sheer facts of it. But that is not how the NCAA saw it. And so that first day of competition was the day I didn't compete. Those long distance events, those aren't my thing. And so I watched the 500 on the side of the pool, and I watched Leah Thomas swim to a national title, beating Olympians, American record holders, the most impressive female swimmers this country has ever seen. And so that second day of competition was the day Leah Thomas and I raced, and we both qualified for finals, top 8. And we come back that night and we race, and almost impossibly enough, we tied. I think we both went 1 minute, 43 seconds, and 52 100ths or whatever it was. And so I go behind the podium, and the official looks at me and Leah, towering over me. We're standing next to each other, and he says, "Great job. You guys tied, and we don't really account for ties. So Leah takes the trophy." And so I, of course, questioned him, which was the first time they had been questioned for anything they had done thus far. And I said, "Okay, well, why are you giving this trophy to Leah?" And he kind of stumbled, not really prepared to answer this, but he said, "Well, Leah has to take the trophy home because Leah has to have it for pictures. You can pose with this one, but you'll go home empty-handed. Leah takes the trophy." And so that's truthfully when I was done waiting for someone else to stick up for us, because I thought someone who was supposed to be protecting us would protect us.
Riley Gaines in studio with us on Hot Mic. What was it like behind the scenes with Leah Thomas for that competition, and what did you do with the trophy they sent you, but they didn't let you go home with?
That trophy, the minute this whole charade happened, it was devalued to me. First of all, I'm a 12-time All-American, so I have lots of them. It wasn't really the tangible object that I was wanting when I was
But you would have kept it.
Right. But immediately meaningless. When they reduced it to a photo op to validate the feelings of a male, I didn't want that stupid trophy. It meant nothing to me because they didn't actually want to celebrate and recognize women. You asked how Lia Thomas was kind of behind the scenes. One thing I do want to touch on is the locker room, because I think it's so important for people, parents, to hear, because no parent, I don't care where you fall on the political spectrum, no parent wants their daughter in a locker room where a male is equipped with male genitalia and is exposing himself. But that's exactly what we dealt with. Us as 18 to 22-year-old girls, we were in the locker room with a 22-year-old male who drops his clothes, fully exposed and intact, watching other women undress. And no one within the NCAA, no one forewarned us this would be the arrangement that we would be sharing this locker room together, and it felt like betrayal.
So no one from the NCAA, they saw this, but they did nothing about it. And I'm sure everyone was complaining about this.
Absolutely.
If you show up and you didn't know it was going to happen.
Absolutely.
Right?
And so, first of all, the swimming locker room is not necessarily a place of modesty. I mean, you have to put on these suits that are so small. It takes about 15 minutes to put these suits on. And so 15 minutes of which you're fully exposed. And so when Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent. And every girl was uncomfortable. And so I immediately left the locker room and I asked one of the officials, I said, okay, I know the guidelines that are in place, the unfair guidelines that allowed Leah to compete with us, but what are the guidelines for this locker room situation? And his words, quote for quote, he said, oh, well, we actually got around this by making the locker rooms unisex, which meant that any man could have walked into our locker room, and bare minimum, they didn't even tell us. So a coach, one of the officials, a parent, any man, not even just a self-identifying female, could have walked into that locker room.
Have you heard from anyone with the NCAA that came up to you separate of all this in any way and said, hey, you're right, we're wrong, I can't admit it, but what you're saying has some validity, or was it just silence from the NCAA?
So it's been a year since this last championships, and the amount of messages that I've received from coaches, athletic directors, presidents of universities who have said, hey, keep fighting. We don't want to get sued. We're scared of retaliation, so we're not going to say anything publicly, but what you're doing is so important. And at first when they said this to me, I felt truly so humbled. I was like, wow, like I'm doing the right thing. But now, a year later, I do not feel honored when these people say this to me, because I've realized that silence is complicity. These people they know it's wrong. They know that it's not right or ethical or fair to allow men into women's spaces in sports, yet they're still not standing up to it. Even the president of the NCAA, Mark Emmert, who released a statement saying he unequivocally stood in his decision to allow Leah to swim with the women because it's based in evolving science. He came up to me at the NCAA convention where they announced Woman of the Year, which I was nominated for, but so was Leah Thomas. He came up to me and said, keep fighting. We support you. But the irony, because he's literally the one we are fighting.
So ESPN chooses to honor Leah Thomas as one of the inspirational women in sports for the last year. And I know you had a tweet out about that. And we've talked a lot about this issue, Riley, and every time we bring it up, there's not a lot of opposition to the common sense things we're saying. If someone disagrees, the response is always, well, it doesn't happen that much, so don't worry about it.
Absolutely.
Stop talking about it. Shut up about it. If someone's on the opposite end politically or whatever it may be. Do you feel like the NCAA truly believes this is what's right, or have they been sort of brainwashed with publicity and afraid to take a stand simply because they think they're going to be outed as someone who's intolerant or whatever the word may be?
You hit the nail on the head. They're introducing so much of this DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, but it's almost as if diversity has turned into racism and equity has turned into really the definition of equity. It's like the NCAA is just using this word but has no idea what the definition is, because the way they're using it is so ironic. But it's been infiltrated into something like sports where DEI, all of this nonsense, it shouldn't be that way in sports, because sports relies on your talent, the work you put in, your biology, your physiology, none of this other junk that they're now putting into sports, making it political, making it divisive. But I think that's the goal. I think that's what they want. And so I think the NCAA and the ESPN, obviously they know the differences between men and women. These ESPN reporters, they cover men and women's sports all the time. They know the difference, but they would rather virtue signal and be seen as kind and inclusive and tolerant and loving and accepting and all of the things, when in reality it truthfully is none of those things to allow men into women's spaces.
You know, we've seen some big organizations come out and say, okay, here's the rules, right? You know, trans women, you know, can't go over and participate against women. It's about your biology. Do you think that we're closer to more common sense rulemaking being clearly declared across all sports?
Truthfully, I do. I feel like the tides are turning. I feel like people are opening their eyes, at least down here in Tennessee. There's nothing scarier than a mad mama bear. But I feel like we're getting a lot of those now, whether that be within the education system, they're seeing what's happening to kids, or in sports, or what that looks like. People are getting fed up with all this gender ideology propaganda stuff that's being pushed. They realize that, I think at first, again, they wanted to be seen as inclusive and virtue signal and all the things. But I think people are realizing how this is harmful, specifically to women and specifically to children.
Surprising, though, that, you know, that women can complain in the NCAA about locker room conditions in the NCAA tournament, or, you know, what the hotel may be compared to the men's tournament, but no one's listening to the women swimmers or across the board in regards to this. So moving forward,
and who are actually being violated
in
their locker room.
Right.
That's the craziest part.
So do you actually believe they're leaning more into that they'll listen to that? Or do you think, well, there have been other instances of this, and this is, they're pointing, Chad's right. We hear, well, it's a one-off, don't worry about it.
Right.
We continue to see it, and it's the same response where biologically, we don't see, if we saw a female who wanted to identify as male compete against men,
Totally.
the result would be way different, because you mentioned that Lia Thomas is ranked 462nd against the men versus top of the class at Penn.
But this is a perfect point, and it's something that, truthfully, the media up until, even still, has done a terrible job of covering. But at this same meet where we had Lia Thomas, who's a man transitioning to woman wearing a female suit with a bulge, this same meet we have another trans athlete swimming who is a female, biological female, transitioning to male, who fully identifies as Isaac, formerly Izzy, goes by Isaac, he, him pronouns. We were expected to treat this person as male. And so the irony, again, because if we're basing this off gender identity, which is stupid anyways, but if we are, then why do we have someone who is a female identifying as a male competing with the women, finishing in the top 5 in the country, being an All-American? And I can tell you exactly why. And it's because Izzy or Isaac would have never been able to compete at that level with the men. But now Isaac is competing with the men. Again, an All-American female, top in the country, finishes dead last amongst the men every time now. I believe Isaac has beaten one other male this season, and he had one arm. Not to be funny, I'm being totally frank. That's the reality of what this is.
Riley Gaines in studio with us. So you're at the University of Pittsburgh. You're facing protesters, and you're speaking, and there's a professor that says that an archaeologist would not be able to tell the difference, male or female, if they were actually examining bones of a time long ago. I don't know what the definition of what he was pointing to was, but what was the reaction in the room, and your reaction speaking to this group in front of said professor?
You couldn't even help but laugh.
Which everyone did.
Which everyone did, because this is a professor who studied anthropology, which anthropology is the study of really human life, human civilization. And so I asked this professor, he was telling me testosterone has no effect on performance. That was his claim. And so I'm asking him, okay, did you take archaeology courses? And he said, of course, I have my PhD. And so I said, okay, so let's say we dig up 2 skeletons 100 years from now, man and woman. Could you tell the difference? Me, of course, knowing the answer. I kind of did this manipulatively. Because any rational person with, a 5th grade understanding of biology knows that you would be able to tell. There's differences in the pelvis and the jaw and the skull and all the different things.
Forensic Files tells us this.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You can watch CSI and know this.
For sure.
But this professor, he felt backed in a corner, I'm sure, and he said no. And it was laughter. That was the reaction, because I think it shows how far the left is willing to go to deny truth, deny reality, deny science. And these are people who are teaching higher education to college-age kids. This person is allowed to distribute the same information to people who are learning this. It's sickening, really.
Yeah, but so you mentioned the left. So I'm so the same. Like if we rewound time, the same people that are they're activists for women's rights,
Right.
are saying this. What they're saying now about we wouldn't be able to tell. I don't understand.
It's flipped.
It's
right?
flipped,
the
but
Title
it's the
IX
same
movement to now, it's people on one side
And even
are now on the
Yeah.
opposite side, I feel like, in terms of protecting women's sports, right?
even since COVID and stuff, this is the party who love to say trust the science. But when it comes to all of this gender ideology stuff, especially in sports, they're doing the exact opposite. And so you're exactly right. It feels like the hypocrisy and really the switch. Of course, the original feminist movement was embraced by the left. We think of the people with the pink hats and all of the antics willing to empower women.
Title IX.
Absolutely. And it's just totally flipped. And I think the Republicans see that this is a winning issue amongst, again, majority of Americans. I think the pendulum has swung a little too far.
Where are we headed? Where are you headed after this? Like,
It's interesting because I was supposed to be in dental school this year. I graduated from University of Kentucky with my degree in human health sciences and health law. And so I had every intent on being in dental school. Hopefully I wanted to pursue endodontics, which is like root canals, but I've totally put that off. I've reapplied, and so I'm set to go back in the fall. But I put that off because I know the relevance and the importance behind this issue and what's at stake if someone doesn't stand up to this. Dental school will always be there, but this might not be. And so I was hoping by this fall, more girls in my position, which again is not unique. This is happening so much. I was hoping more people would be standing up to this, and it would kind of be like a passing of the torch moment, because to be totally frank, I don't know if politics is my calling, but I still don't feel like that has been garnered yet. So I kind of pray every day, where do I need to be? Where does God need to put me to continue making impact? Because I've realized this is something I'm really passionate about, and I just got married. I have a little sister. I can only hope one day that I am fortunate enough to have a daughter, and I can't imagine being in the position that I'm in and not fighting for her. My little sister, she just was the Tennessee state champion in gymnastics.
That's awesome.
And I can't imagine not fighting for her. And so, to be honest, I don't know what my future looks like.
final 2 minutes. By the way, the Gaines family across the SEC.
Yeah.
Fantastic. What's the worst thing you faced by having the stance that you have, and why don't more athletes in women's sports take this front that you're doing?
I know we only have 2 minutes, and that's not near enough time to touch on the silencing aspect of what's gone on this past year from these universities and the media and these large organizations like ESPN even. It's a lot more chilling to think about how we're having our freedom of speech suppressed than the fairness in women's sports piece. These girls, Lia Thomas's teammates, it's crazy what they went through on a daily basis. I can't say enough good things about my athletic director, Mitch Barnhart. When I was on the verge of speaking out, he told me to speak my heart. He said, "We love you, we support you, say what you feel, speak your convictions." And I realized what a rarity that is. And so girls aren't speaking out because they're scared. And so my final message to the people listening, parents, medical professionals, coaches, whether that be the high school, middle school, whatever level that might be, female athletes, even male athletes, it's so important to use your voice, be bold, be loud, don't be scared to ruffle feathers, because we need people willing to do that, because again, this is how the overwhelming majority of the people in this country and really worldwide feel.
Yes, and that it does surprise me, Chad, and we've echoed this, how if it's the vast opinion, why we don't see more just saying, hey, do the right thing
When we
here.
bring it up, people just stay silent.
So
Or it doesn't
if
happen
Leah
enough.
wants to be called Leah, I'll call Leah, right? But like, I'm not going to buy into the fact that Leah should compete against women in the sport period and go from 462nd to first.
Kudos for standing up for this. We really appreciate you
Thank
coming
you.
in. and
You're
doing
welcome
this. Thank you.
anytime.
Yeah.
We're in the same city.
Of course, right? I'll just drive over.
6th and Peabody, the place to be for
You
sure.
know now when you walk in that we sometimes we're on air, so you
By
can't
the next,
yell,
hey,
but
the next
you know
time
that now.
the next time you come in, Riley, you'll have 3 underscores in your Twitter handle.
Absolutely. That's the goal, right?
That's right. Thanks for coming.
Of course. Thank you.